Good morning and welcome to another episode of the 10,000 Club, where we are taking 30 minutes, one bite at a time, towards those 10,000 hours of what we believe it takes to become a pro at any one given thing. So today I'm here with Cindy and Doug. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. And today we're talking about you didn't get the listing, why? And believe it or not, this happens to all of us. I'm sure that Doug, you and Cindy both could allude to the fact that you have gone on a listing appointment and not left as the winner, or found out later that you were not the winner.
That's a fact. That's a fact. It's sad but true. Sad but true.
Yes, Don't like to admit it, but yep.
So there's a lot of factors that come into this. Sometimes you don't ever get feedback. Do you oftentimes ask for feedback, like, hey, why didn't I get the listing? Is that a fair question to ask?
Yeah, that's a very fair question. If I don't get the listing, and just so you know, on record, it doesn't happen very often, but
right.
But if it did, it did, hypothetically, if it did, I do love to call the seller again and say, hey, to make me a better agent in the future, what could I have done? Or, you know, what would it have looked like in order for you to have chosen me? And again, I'm very direct about that because it's there just to help me get better at what I do. And again, most of the time you've already started a relationship with these folks on the phone. You've had some good preliminary work up to the appointment. So the dialogue that you have with folks is very good. But they chose, I mean, let's say they chose an agent because it was a relative, or good heavens, it was maybe somebody that went to their church, or somebody that knew the neighborhood better than me, right? Think about that. I mean, those are things, all the things that we can do to get better up to the listing appointment. That's kind of where I want to learn.
Yeah. What about you, Cindy? Do you ever call afterward?
Oh, I absolutely do. Because I do want to know, you know, I follow up with them. And again, in real estate, follow-up's real important. And I think it's hard for us sometimes. We get busy. But I just had an experience. I didn't get the listing. I wasn't happy about it. But again, I followed up with her. It was a little bit unique property, me and my unique properties, but it was an apple orchard. And it was a business that hadn't been run in a couple years, but it was very unique. Had a great listing appointment. I went in prepared, and I always do, because I'm not good on the cuff at all. So I've got to have things in front of me, and it went really well. And she had told me she would get back with me the next week. She was interviewing another agent, and because it was in St. John's, I figured it was probably a St. John's agent. And I called her and got her voicemail. Well, then I received a message back from her, very nice. And she said that she wanted to go with me. She felt really connected to me, that I would do a good job, but she talked to her accountant, and her accountant felt that she should go with this other realtor that was based in St. John's and very familiar with the area. Funny thing about that, I listed and I'm closing today on a house two doors down from her in St. John's. But what that told me, and I also sent her a follow-up card and told her, good luck with, you know, the sale of your home, you know, because I want to get my business card there, because she's from St. John's. I'm not far from St. John's. I don't know why some people think, you know, if you're not living in that community, that you're not familiar with that. But what I learned from it is I didn't do a good enough job on explaining that I do work in the St. John's area. So I'm always constantly trying to make my presentation a little bit better each time. So I was a little bummed about that, but I did learn from it. And also she had called and said, hey, she really wanted to go with me. And I had never met her accountant. So I kind of, said, okay, that's good. I'll do better next time.
Yeah. And what I like about that is you were able to say, you did what Doug does, and you made that phone call, but then you took that feedback to heart and said, what could I have done differently?
Yes.
And what is the call to action right now? And the call to action that I heard, and Doug, I don't know about you, but to me, the call to action was, let's sit and write a handwritten note to say, hey, thank you so much. Thank you for the feedback, but here's my card. In the event that something doesn't work out, or maybe because we had a connection, you might know somebody else in the area
Yes.
who, eventually they may give you a call as a result of it. How did this lady get your name initially? Was it because of the listing that you had there?
No, I actually had another farm I had listed on DeWitt Road, and they were friends of mine. I've known them. I dealt with real estate with them for years. They went to some estate sale and just got to talking, and they had my card and gave her my card, and that's how she called me. And quite honestly, that's how I get a lot of my business, business cards, things like that. It's those little touches that you never know when they're going to pay you back.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I got that contact. And so
And Cindy, the fact that you took the time after that to write that note,
yeah,
I will almost guarantee you that other agents aren't doing what you're doing after this was all. Obviously, you didn't get the listing, but you kept in front of them. You kept the card in front of them. You wished them luck in the future. We all know that things go sideways, right? They pick another agent, something happens down the road. Good heavens, are they going to pick up the phone and call you? There's a very good chance they will.
yeah. And the other thing is, the reason why I called her too is I'm the type of person, in my back of my mind, I don't want negative thoughts like, oh, I didn't get it. I should have did this. I should have done that. I'd rather know so I can move on, because I don't want that to defeat me on my next listing appointment. And I think that's real important, because that self-talk that we do, and I'm like that. So I said, I'm gonna make the call. Just gonna do it.
All that mindset. Good job. Good job.
So there's lots of reasons that we might not get the listing, right? And one of them might just be, hey, I had a connection to somebody else. Doug talked about, maybe there was a family member. Sometimes you go to a listing appointment and you realize later, maybe you were being used, right? Because they already had their Uncle Joe that was going to list it, but Joe said it was worth this much, and they wanted to kind of poke around and talk to a couple of other people to see what did others think. So that can happen too.
Yeah.
But what if you didn't get it because of just the price? What kind of conversations might you have had at the table, or wish you had had when you find out later that you didn't get the listing because of price?
Yeah, that can be a difficult one, but I always try to go in. I'll go in and do a quick CMA, and I'll have a high, middle, and a low. And if I feel pretty strong about what I think it should be listed at, I won't feel as bad, because I feel like I did my best. But sometimes it happens, because you have some agents that are going to list it higher. Now, in this market, it's a little bit different, because I try to find out what they're thinking before I get there. And I try to do that qualifying over the phone, because this market is so different. And I don't want to be caught off guard. I really don't.
Yeah. I saw Doug's light bulb go off when you
my
said
light
qualify.
bulb went on, because I'm one of those guys that I'm asking a lot of those questions before I get there. And one of those questions is, hey, so you think the property's worth X? Or you get into a price conversation about that. And again, I'll always hear sellers say, well, Doug, you're the professional, right? You're going to tell me what it's worth. I said, yep, I certainly will be willing to do that. But I just kind of wanted to get an idea of what you guys felt the property was worth. So I don't let you down.
Exactly.
So you have these conversations up front. So when you literally are sitting at the kitchen table during that appointment, you feel like it's just a continuation of the questions that you already asked before you got there. And boy, does that just take down their guard? Does that make this conversation a lot more free flowing?
Sure.
To me, the more you know before you're sitting at the kitchen table, the better decisions you can make, the better homework you can do. Man, if they think it's worth $50,000 more than what you do, that's going to be an awkward conversation at that table, right? But at least you know that going into that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And sometimes you're not going to find that out before you go. Sometimes they don't want to tell you what,
right.
But
they want to see what you say.
That definitely happens. So sometimes the qualifying questions are super valuable, because then you're able to sit down and say, well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, You know, on the phone, you mentioned you were looking to get 425,000 for your house, but I'll tell you, I have not been able to find a single home that is sold over 400,000 in the last 120 days. Let's take a deeper dive into sort of what's happened in your neighborhood. And then you're
Sure.
able to poke through. And I love it when you've got a picture of the house and they know that that's Marion's, you know, Steve's house down the street. They
Yeah.
know the homes because they've
Yes,
watched each of those sales.
Yeah.
And, you know, I always say the data doesn't lie. Emotionally, we know what people feel about their home. But again, if you're able to have qualifying questions, that's great. If not, sometimes it's not great news when you sit down and you just have to figure out how to maneuver through those difficult conversations with a seller that you've just delivered bad news to.
Yeah, it's kind of like the conversation you have with them on the phone when you say, are you planning on interviewing any other agents
Mhm,
for the job of selling your home?
mhm.
And people will tell you that. And I'm kind of one of those guys that plans a little strategy. I want to go last, right? I want to go last. So again, the more you know up front, what's your competition, what they're thinking about price, all of the things help you to be, as you said, Tracy, to be a pro. I mean, you
Mhm.
want to know the
Yeah.
neighborhood. You want to know what some of their objections are going to be before you get to the kitchen table, because boy, if you could get ahead of those in a conversation, that goes a long way.
Yeah.
yeah, and it helps you be, more prepared, and your confidence is better too, because you're not going in there kind of flying by the seat, saying, hey, and not being familiar with any of that, because that's a tough, because you're,
Yeah.
they're looking at you for guidance and everything. So I always want to make sure I'm prepared as much as possible.
Yeah, I'd like to know who my competition is. So
Me
if
too.
I'm going into a neighborhood, I always like to look at the sales that have happened over the last year.
Yeah,
Has it been consistently one broker? Has it been consistently one agent? Because
Yeah.
if it is, then I'm going to have an idea of what my competition looks like. I'm going to look at what they're asking, what their sold prices, and that percentage of sale price to ask. What does that look like?
Yeah.
I want to dial it in to figure out who am I competing with, right?
yeah. Yeah, because you can go in and see when's the last time it sold. You could go into Flex or your MLS and pull the last sold. And so you kind of have an idea of who sold it, what it sold for. And they may even have old photos in there, so you can kind of get familiar with it.
Mhm.
I always do that because it kind of helps me. It kind of gives me an edge, because I kind of know I'm not going to be surprised by the floor plan or anything like that. And sometimes you pull up at the house and you're like, wow, is that the same house?
Mhm.
But I think that's a real good guide, and obviously BSNA and all that. So you're
Yeah, but I
again,
like that. If you've have an opportunity to sit down for a listing appointment and you can look back and see the house sold 5 years ago, and you can see that it was a new roof 5 years ago.
yeah,
Well, you immediately walk in and say, okay, well, I can see, the house sold in,
yep,
2020 or 2019, and you had a new roof then. So that's a positive for, another buyer. You can learn a lot about their house before you ever walk in the door.
yeah, you sure can. And again, with the pricing, if you have a low, a middle, and a high, you kind of know the range. So you're not too low, you're not too high. You get a better idea. Then you can see what the the improvements are, the condition, and all that when you go on the
Yeah.
appointment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I think our topic for today, when we talked about the why in all of this, that why is it's a number of these things that we're talking about right now, right? That all make us that pro. So when we are sitting down at the end of the time, if you don't get the listing, you probably have a pretty good read on the why, right? And you can look at, and I don't want to blame others. I just assume blame myself, right? To say, look, Doug, you didn't come prepared. You didn't have your best, your best time with them. They don't feel the confidence that they need to feel. And so all of those things, they all play into that. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And what can you learn about a neighborhood before you ever say you're not familiar with the neighborhood? Maybe you live in Lansing and you don't sell a lot in DeWitt or in St. John's. What happens if you have a listing appointment and you haven't even had a chance to drive by the house because they called you last night and said, look, we're ready to make a decision, but I just got this glaring review from my friend Mary about you, Doug, And can you be here tomorrow at noon? What do you do?
Well, and again, if that's the case,
Scramble.
absolutely, you scramble, right? That's when RPR and
Be a
BSNA
pro.
and a lot of those things help you as quickly as you can. And I might say that in a listing appointment, you know, or before the listing appointment. Hey, now I'll do as much homework as I can before I see you. But I said, what I probably will want to do is to spend some time after our appointment, just to make sure that we're all on the same page with what we're doing. So again, don't not go on that appointment. Please go on that appointment.
Oh,
It gives you
yeah.
a chance. This is all about relationship building. They want you there. So again, it's one of those things that, you know, yes, I've been to those appointments that it feels like, man, I'm not really prepared. But yet the conversation then begins, the trust is starting to be built. So there's a lot of things that happen early on in that conversation.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. I like to take a photo of the front of the house from my phone and put it into my listing presentation. But I can tell you that I've had to go to Google Photos before and pull up the house, take a screenshot, dial it down because I've never been to the house. And so I'll say to the seller, you know, your home has never sold. I cannot find any previous photos. So my first look today is going to be my first really look into your home. So let's start by taking that walk through the house. Let me familiarize myself with what you have. And then I've got that, you know, high, middle, and low price, actually high, middle, and low. I like that.
We know what you meant.
Yeah. But, you know, and then we're going to dial that in to figure out, you know, based on these comps and what I see in your home, why did the public say yes to these houses at these prices? And how does your home compare to that?
Yeah. And I'll do before I get there, and I'm sure you guys do, I do a quick CMA. And sometimes I don't have a photo of the house. I try to go by the neighborhood, just to drive by, you know, just to have an idea, especially if I'm not familiar with it. But I'll do a quick CMA and again, have, you know, as much information as I can. And then I'll go in, it kind of just like you, Tracy, and I'll go in and want to tour the house and I'll take notes and all that and compliment the things I can compliment on. If, you know, if they start showing me a photo of their family and they were telling me stories about it, I mean, I try to make a personal connection right away. If they have a dog, I'll make a big deal about the dog. Now I will, because I have my own, but I didn't before, so I had to, oh, I love it. No, but that personal connection, and really the minute they come to that door, smile, be confident, even if you're nervous, because I've gone to ones I've been nervous at too, and smile, be confident, say hi, compliment. Oh, wow, I love this flower out here. And I don't know, that kind of breaks the ice for me anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So in summary, it's really about overcoming objections, right? And we've done live streams on that before. This one is just specifically geared towards not getting a listing, and it happens to all of us. And so essentially it's about qualifying phone calls. When you get the phone call that says, could you, as an invitation to come to the home, try to ask a few questions on the phone that day, interview them to get an idea of what they're looking for. What is their motivation to move? Where are they going? These kinds of questions on the front end allude to the question or the conversation that Doug said. My conversation on the phone just transfers right to the dining room table where they eat, where they're comfortable. It's an ease of a conversation.
You know, Tracy, that tells them, didn't mean to interrupt, but that tells them that you were listening.
Yeah, for sure.
So you said you're moving to Dallas. You said you needed to be there by the first of the year. You said you'd like to price your home at $425 and you'd like to whatever. I mean, there's just all of those things that the more prepared you are, the more of a pro you are with listening to needs, wants, wishes, desires. Man alive, that goes so far when you're sitting down at the kitchen table. So.
Yeah, and take those notes with you so you have something to, because me, again, on the fly, not good. So I write it all down, and I'll have a folder and a sheet of paper, and I'll have the date when I talk to them, because I don't want to say, oh, I talked to you yesterday. I'm like, oh, no, it really was last week. and with the different notes that they tell me on the phone. And that can help you, especially if you start to stumble, you can kind of
Yeah.
look down and go, oh yeah,
Recenter yourself. Boom.
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
So yeah, so qualify conversations, interview your client, find out the details that you can that leads you from the phone to the kitchen table. Know your competition in the neighborhood. And when I say competition, who are the other agents? And ask that question when you're on the phone.
Yeah.
Are you interviewing anyone else? Know the neighborhood, be a pro in the neighborhood, learn as much you
Yeah.
can about the amenities in the neighborhood. Does it have a pool? Do they have sidewalks? Do they have a neighborhood playground? What are the association fees? Learn about some of the fees that might be associated. You can learn these things from previous listings. And then finally, choose to learn from the feedback that comes from the seller if you didn't get the listing. And
Yeah.
it happens to all of us, and it will continue to happen to all of us. And at the end of the day, it's always a choice to take what the feedback you get and learn from it.
Yep.
Yep.
Any final
Absolutely.
thoughts, gang?
Cindy, anything?
Well, and another thing is, ask them what they love about the house. Because then that gets them talking more, because they're, oh, I loved the kitchen when I bought the house. So those are little notes you could put down and just to help, but you can do it.
It's all about the relationship, folks. This is a relationship business. We always talk about that, right? And again, the better we get at being good listeners, I said some of the best salespeople I know are great listeners, right? They ask the question and then they get what? They get quiet. Because I wanted to learn. So the better prepared you can be before you get there, the better qualifying you're going to do, the more listings you're going to take.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And just a reminder to be connecting. 50% of your day should be connecting in some way, whether it's writing notes, sending texts, writing emails, connecting on social media, making phone calls, having lunches or coffees. You have to be connecting with people so that eventually those can lead to real live buyers and sellers.
Yep.
So,
I gotta write more notes, Cindy. I gotta write more notes.
okay, great. Everyone have a great day. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Been good. Thanks, guys.